welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, as you'll see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where, as you can probably tell from the title, it's a bit of a strange thing, because you might be like, hey Dear Darling, you're talking about unpacking in today's episode. That's right, because apparently I never did an Animal Crossing episode where I talked about unpacking. It was kindly brought up to me by, I cannot remember your name, but you comment a lot and you have really cool comments with a lot of an interesting commentary about the game, but I always remember you as the person with a Luca avatar. I don't remember anyone's usernames. If you change your avatar, you're basically invisible to me, because I'll just be like, who are you anymore? Anyway, hello there everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow at 6:04pm on Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. Yeah, it's brought to my attention that basically I never actually spoke about unpacking in an Animal Crossing episode. So we're going to do it now, despite the fact it's probably been like a month and a half, I think, since I finished unpacking. Is that about right? No, but that's too long. No, it might be about right actually, because I think I pre-recorded quite a few episodes of unpacking. Anyway, it's been a long time since I've played unpacking, so I don't remember all of my bits and pieces of it, like my thoughts about it extremely well. It's not like hot off a press, so we'll do our best, I suppose, to talk about it. But in general, I liked unpacking. I liked it quite a lot. I wouldn't really constitute it as a puzzle game, to be honest. It's kind of more it's weird to say, but I guess it's kind of like in the genre of simulator-esque games, but the thing it's simulating is unpacking, I suppose, and moving house. It's more like but I think the most that you get from it is it's basically sort of like a ambient lore-based game, where basically it's a storytelling game, but told through genuinely one of the most creative, I'm not really storytelling mediums, not medium as in like physical media property, but medium as in like way to tell a story I've actually seen. Like telling a story through how someone unpacks and the items that they've got is pretty cool. Obviously there are puzzle like elements to it, but they don't really constitute a main part of the game. The game is very much focused on vibes and the story it's trying to tell, and I think it nails that on all accounts. I think this is probably one of the clearest indications of a game which had a very specific vision that it's going for, and it just nails it. Like, there's not really much else to say about it. It seeks to tell a story about a girl and her life journey through through the very mundane task, I suppose, of unpacking objects. And you can actually glean a lot from the items she keeps around, the items she prioritizes, where you're allowed to put certain items, the way she packs things and the way you unpack things, all serve to tell a story. And I think at the bare minimum, I think it should be applauded for the fact that it's such a creative concept for a game, in my opinion. I've not really seen anything like it before, and it helps certainly, but I think the game is genuinely enjoyable. Of course, it's not going to be for everyone. This is not a game I would willy-nilly recommend to everyone, because I don't think everyone will get, satisfaction necessarily out of it. I'm not going to say you can't get satisfaction out of it, but I will say that I can certainly think of a lot of my friends who would not care for this game. Despite, obviously respecting it being a very cool concept, not everyone is going to be like, yeah, this is something which I thoroughly enjoy playing. I forgot, at some point, Celeste visited the island. I think when I did one of the pre-recorded episodes, and I just never picked it up. So what should I say? The vibes of unpacking, I think, are on point. I think it's got a very, cute style. It very much thinks about its aesthetics quite a lot, and how they reflect on the character, and how things cohesively fit together, and how things evolve, I suppose, certainly from like when you're a kid, how things are very much more pastel and brightly coloured, and as she gets older, things become a bit more mature and demure, but also the use of colour to communicate things, like how, oh yeah, by the way, spoilers for unpacking, so, this is your warning from here on out. Spoiler, there's no holds barred anymore. But how you communicate things, like how when she moves in with her first boyfriend, her boyfriend has very sleek business, modernist, I suppose, stylings with black and monochrome colours, things which are very sort of modern, I suppose, in this day and age, while her colourful things serve as a big contrast to that, and it shows their like incompatibility compared to her girlfriend, who becomes her wife later on, where their items seem to seamlessly blend together. I think there's a lot of also very clever storytelling moments, I suppose, of the way they use the puzzle mechanics, because while I'm not sure might ever write the puzzle-esque mechanics of a game, but obviously they're not really all that puzzly, and there's not a huge focus. I am aware there's apparently a dark star mode, which makes it a bit more puzzly, but still, I don't think it's a focus of the game. I think it how do I put this? I do think those mechanics are a little superfluous, but I understand why they're put in, because they're used in cool moments. But they're used in a cool way to tell certain moments, like when you move in with she moves in with her first boyfriend, or her ex-boyfriend, I suppose. The fact she has her like university degree, which she can't put anywhere because it physically won't fit anywhere, and a lot of places won't allow it to be put. So the only place that she really has to put it is like in a cupboard or under the bed. Obviously, you know, showing how, you know, her hard work, I suppose, gets stashed away as well, you know, in this relationship or something like that, depending how you want to read into it. To be honest, there's a lot of personal interpretation, I think, up to a lot of these stories, which is cool. I do thoroughly enjoy that. There's other cool things, like the fact when she breaks up with her boyfriend, like she has a photo, but the only place you're allowed to put the photo is somewhere where she can't see it because she can't stand having it out. I think it's pretty cool. There's a lot of really nice, like, subtle storylines going on about through Unpacking, which you can sort of pick up on. Like, obviously you can see her passion for art as it starts from a younger age with her doodles, and how it eventually transpires into her pursuing a career in art and becoming quite acclaimed for it, and how, you know, it's all inspired from like her childhood toys, I suppose, in the first place, with like that pig toy or whatever being the central main character in the children's book, which she illustrates for or created. I don't know, I suppose you can have your own theories about that. What else is an interesting story through line? There's an interesting story which is pointed out to me about her deteriorating health condition, which I only somewhat picked up on, I think, while I played through. But I think the most notable thing being towards the end of the game, she has a walking stick, while presumably she's around sort of like 20 to 30. Apparently also, and I looked it up like in a video like afterwards, is that there's other things which I missed as well. Apparently there's like heating pads for pain relief, which I just thought were bandages or plasters, and there were something called like Tiger Balm, which I think is like a pain relief sort of cream, which I've not heard of, but, you know, fair enough. Those are all, it's very much a sort of game like where if you recognise it, you get more out of it, I suppose, because it's chock full of, like, we sort of reference in very small subtle things by the nature of its design in the first place. That's like the only way you can really tell the story. Nothing is explicitly spelled out, but a lot of it can be obviously inferred. So it's still pretty clear, while still having like these nice subtle through points as well, I think. What else is pretty cool? Like how you can see how her interests change, you know. Oh, another thing of a health condition is the fact that she was really sporty as a child, but then like the sports stuff like slowly like went away, I assume, due to her own health condition not allowing her to pursue those sort of activities anymore. I don't really know, but that's again my own theory. Yeah, it's pretty cool to see how a story evolves, and I know I'm going back to like the concept of it quite a lot, but I think that really is basically the key focus of this game. As I say, this game is like laser focused in what it wants to do. It's like it knows exactly what it wants, and when you play it, you know basically from the first level exactly what you're going to get from it. It's really creative in the concept, and the concept is basically, you know, a strong focal point of it, which is why I keep talking about it. Like the same way in like a puzzle game, I would talk about the cleverness of the puzzles, and the story game, I would talk about the depth of its story and mechanics, how like in a mechanical game how punchy its mechanics are. This one is very much concept based, I think, in my opinion. Of course, your mileage may vary. I think the sound design and music actually should get more credit for this game. You know, I haven't really spoke about that, but music is very nice. I think it fits a mood, and you can see how it evolves and through all the different places that she lives in, how the music changes to reflect, I suppose, her stage of her life. And one really underrated thing I think about it is the fact that the sound effects in the game actually kind of go crazy, because like I don't know if there's an absurd amount of sound effects or something in the game, but it's one thing I very subtly noticed while playing the game, is the fact that basically everything sounds correct. And you might be like, what are you talking about? Well, for a game which is based around placing like hundreds of objects in different places on different materials and that sort of thing, I don't remember there ever being a point where I was like, that's a weird sound for that thing to make. Like, the Foley artist must have had a fantastic day, and I have been recommended that the fact that I think I don't know if it's actually the Foley artist or the composers who made a video, but someone who related to the sound team, I suppose, of Unpacking, made apparently like a short mini documentary video-esque thing about the challenges they faced during it. And I think it probably shows during the game how like every single thing has its own like individual sound effect, which, you know, works pretty well, to be honest. It's a sort of like level of care and detail which is desired in this sort of game, because it's by nature it is a game about, I suppose, focusing on these details. So you'd be quite remiss if it was not included. Yeah, what else can I say about the game? Criticisms, I suppose. What did I not like about it? I mean, I think my main one is surprisingly weird to say coming from me, is about the puzzle mechanic, where I'm just like, I understand why it's there, but I don't think it contributed enough to me personally to be like, to outweigh the times where I'm just like, hey, sometimes it's pretty annoying trying to figure out where something should go. Or at least I feel like I understand why it's put in, and it's to get those cool story moments of like, putting a certificate under the bed, or whatchamacallit, what was the other one I brought out? Or putting the ex's photo like in the cupboard. I think these are pretty cool, but the things I remember most about it was whenever I've done with a level, just being like kind of like outraged, being like, I'm not outraged, but being sort of surprised, being like, oh, I can't put this thing here. That's kind of surprising to me. Or it's like, this is like where I want to put it. I guess thereby in its nature is because you're unpacking someone else's life, not your life. So you could argue that you're not really meant to be unpacking things how you would unpack things, even though that's the only thing you can do. You're unpacking things for the main character. So yeah. What else can I say about it? It's a very comfy, it's a very cozy game, which is always nice. I've got nothing against my cozy games. I mean, look at me playing Animal Crossing for about 1,000 days in a row. I like cozy games. I like comfy games in that regard, and I think this basically ticks the boxes. It kind of makes me feel like kind words in that regard, where it's basically the core nature of it is a comfy game. So I'm not going to say it's difficult to criticize in that sense, because I don't think that's really the point. I mean, I'm not trying to turn what I'm doing into like a review. It's not a review. These are not thought out like thoughts and statements and justified things. These are just whimsical opinions that I have and experiences while playing the game. But by nature of it being a relaxing based game, I suppose, like a lo-fi esque video game, or I should say the lo-fi of video games is the genre of lo-fi of video. You know what I'm trying to say, probably. It's hard to get it particularly wrong, because things are not meant to be like competitive. Things aren't meant to, as long as it's not frustrating, that's kind of like ticking the boxes. Which is why the only thing I can really say is about the sort of the puzzly aspect of putting the things down is my only real gripe with the game. But it's not even that big a gripe, because it's not like particularly hard or anything. It just sort of feels like it after playing through the game. I'm like, it feels like a mismatch, I suppose. But I suppose if it didn't have it, then I think a lot of people would be like, there is no substance to this game. Like, what's the point? It's like how people criticize story games for being walking simulators, which I sort of resent that fact, because it's story-based games. Walking simulators, I suppose, has a bit more of a negative connotation than I think these story games deserve. If you might be like, by way of its nature, a video game needs to have a gamified aspect of it for it to be considered a game. And while I understand that perspective, I feel like the interactivity is kind of more the part which makes it a game in the first place. It might be a glorified medium, but it still sets itself apart from movies by way of interaction. No? And it's only, I feel like, the most extreme examples which really stand up to that sort of scrutiny of it's indistinguishable from a movie if you have like no agency over the game. But there's not many games which I think are straight up basically just movies where you press the A button to play, to like continue the story. That is like, even the most story focused games, often maybe you get like different dialogue, or maybe you get to see something cool if you explore, etc, etc. So it's not like I resent the criticism, but it's not one I agree with, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose that getting even more personal was that I ended up liking unpacking quite a lot, because I like, tidying things. I like making things clean. I like organising things. So I guess it sort of scratches an itch in that sort of way as well, which maybe that sort of leans into the sort of comforting feel this game has. Although I will say it's a bit different from Kind Words sort of comforting, where Kind Words is sometimes a game I just boot up randomly to play. I can't really see myself playing Unpacking through again. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying games should have replayability to have inherent value. That's not what I mean. I'm just, comparing the experiences where, Unpacking felt like a sort of one-time through, low, calm, relaxing experience, while, you know, Kind Words is obviously going for something different, so maybe it's not fair for me to compare them in that way, which is fair enough. What else is cool during unpacking? I think it's quite cool to see, you know, you might, you know, I'm trying to think how to phrase this, but basically the diversity of representation is actually pretty cool in the game. I know some people might turn up their nose. Well, I mean, it depends why you turn up your nose at it, I suppose. If you turn up your nose because you don't like other cultures, then what? That's weird. Well, we're obviously not going to entertain those sort of thoughts, because I like to think that my audience are people who are reasonable, you know, who are good people, or at least baseline okay people. Which, yeah, you know, like I don't have any reason to believe you would be a bad person anyway. That's not my going. But of course, some people are like, you know, diversity feels like whatever. But, you know, I'm very much on the fence where diversity is a good thing, obviously, as long as it's, you know, reasonable, faithful representation, right? But there's a lot of representation, I suppose, in my game. You know, especially like the main character is Jewish, as far as we can tell. I don't know necessarily what, like, how am I trying to phrase this? I don't know. I'm trying to think how to phrase this, because, again, I feel like I'm going to say something stupid, which is not what I mean. But basically, the long and short of it is, I think it's cool to see a lot of different things represented. You know, like, I think I said a lot during a later episode where, presumably, the wife of a main character is Asian of some kind. What kind? I can't really say, but basically there's a lot of things which, you know, I'm very familiar with, which sort of made me go like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, I've heard, like, soy sauce bottles, like different types of soy sauce bottles as well, you know. Sesame oil, from what I recall, there's a rice cooker, which made me very much go like, wow. And maybe it seems stupid to say. I think there was also like Chinese decorations, from what I recall, which is why, you know, again, I don't think anything is confirmed in game, but it's, you know, what my own interpretation, because I feel like I remember there was some like red and gold decorations, which made me be like, whoa, these very much look like sort of like Chinese wall fortune decals or whatever. But either way, you know, more representation is always good in my books, because it, you know, it allows a deeper connection, I think, for people. And if you don't connect with that culture, then, you know, well, what's the difference when there being a lack of it, I suppose, in the first place, right? So I think it's pretty cool that those things, you know, there was a lot of representation all throughout, through the protagonist and, you know, like her friends. I mean, that's kind of it, I suppose. There's not like many other characters in there, but still. There's a lot of references in that game. I think I haven't actually looked it up, but I should look it up to see like what movies and like what books and what video games are references. I feel like I got a reasonable amount of the video games, and I tried with some of the movies, and I got basically like none of the books, but still. Yeah, I don't know what else is pretty cool to say. It's just a pretty cool game, you know. It's my summary of a game is it knows what it's going for, and it executes on it incredibly well. And if that's something that you like to interface with, if that's something you like, you're going to enjoy the game. And if you don't, then you're not. It's basically as simple as that. It's a nice experience, I think. So it's a sort of game where I feel like you would know if you like a sort of game or not. Like, I feel like it's very clear. It doesn't try and hide exactly what it's going for. But anyway, apologies, a pause, but we're going to round this episode off here. So, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope we see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.